right, everybody, welcome. Thank you for choosing to be here. We're always extremely grateful to see such support from so many familiar faces. And every single time we host one of these events, the familiar faces keep growing and growing as the deals keep pouring and pouring in. So many of you, even tonight, are engaged in active deals as we speak, which is incredible. We know you could be anywhere, and we know that you probably sat in traffic for 2 hours to get here. So thank you. So did we. And we have obviously a very special lineup tonight. And we always start with an education piece because so many of you are involved at this point in landlording. The issues are always current and the issues are evolving. As the laws keep changing, the legislation gets introduced. There is nothing more timely than the May 1st implementation, the forced implementation of the Ontario Tenancy Agreement that we all must use at this point. That supersedes everything, and we have none other than probably the most knowledgeable leader in his field, Mr. Mark Weisleder. Everybody wants to just welcome Mark here tonight. Mark is obviously a lawyer, real estate law. He's the founder, one of the founders of realestatelawyers.ca, which revolutionized how you sign your deals. Instead of you having to rush to Bay Street to sign 20 minutes worth of documents and go through all that mess, they actually come to you. So they've been leaders and innovators in that space, but they're also educators. They actually educate the real estate industry and agents. He actually teaches at Oria College, which is the Ontario Real Estate Association's college, and he's a frequent guest where we train our staff. We have a team of 30 agents, and he actually comes in for workshops all the time, so our people know exactly what they need to do and how to do their jobs well and stay informed. So I don't want to take up too much more time. I want to get through the education piece because we have there's a lot more exciting things as well to follow, like an extremely high-level overview, but we're going to talk about an overview of the market as to where it stands. But I'm going to let the actual guest, the guest of that segment speak to it, and I can't actually wait to introduce him. So I'm not going to take up another minute, Mark. Welcome. Thank you for being here, and I hope everybody finds everything you have to say extremely useful.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you. Just so you know, everything that I'm going to show on screen is in the handout that I had prepared, so you don't have to copy everything down. Plus, I think they're going to send all of you by email a copy of the PowerPoint. So you're going to have everything. You don't have to write. You can enjoy. You can listen. I know there will be questions, but I do want to make sure I get through the material. I am sticking around later for the question or conversation piece, so if you do have questions, make a note. It's just I want to make sure, first of all, that I get through all the material because we have the other speakers that want to get up here as well, and I don't want to go too late. So thank you very much for having me. For those who haven't seen me before, I've been doing this for 35 years, so I think I've seen everything there is to see in a real estate deal, good and bad. I've written top-selling books for both real estate agents, for buyers, sellers, and landlords. I've been on every TV news show as a real estate expert. My first time at BNN, I walked in and everybody's just too good looking there. And you know, I said, what, you have to go to makeup. So I said, okay, so I go to makeup. They finished with me. I said, what do I do now? Well, you got to go to the other room. The host is going to come and see you. So I go to the other room and Greg, who's too good looking, comes and sees me. I say, hello. He said, have you been to makeup? Great way to start the thing. I've written columns for Toronto Star for many years, and I write a column every month in Real Estate Magazine, which goes to realtors across the country, and I'm a senior partner at realestatelawyers.ca. Have you seen our cars driving around? Real Estate Lawyers card. Okay, there's a reason for that. These are the books I've written. Number one, sellers for agents and buyers and sellers. And my book for landlords, I brought some here. I think it's going to be a gift for all of you to take with you. Thank you very much. You're very welcome. Everything you're going to need to know to be a successful landlord is coming to you this evening. So just a little bit about my firm, and as was mentioned, the biggest thing is we come to the client's house to sign the papers. We have 35 offices all around Ontario. I close deals everywhere. Ottawa, Sudbury, because I can. But most clients don't want to deal with traffic. They don't want to deal with parking. They'd like to sign in the comfort of their own home, and we go to their home 95% of the time to sign the papers, and everything is done on an iPad. And so as soon as you sign, all the papers are emailed to you, so you see exactly what you've signed. The person in the car emails them back to the office. They go right back to the other lawyer. No paper. We could close the deal in 24 hours. I prefer to have a little longer than 24 hours, but we could close the deal, frankly, that quickly. We also make the banking very, I don't know, have any of you closed a real estate deal before? Okay, so you know what it's like on the day of closing if you go to a bank to get a bank draft, go running to the lawyer's office while you're packing up and doing everything. We make it easy. We don't take a bank draft. We don't take a certified check. What we did was we opened a trust account at every bank. And so what we do is we say, where do you bank? Oh, TD, thank you very much. Here's our TD trust account. You go to your bank, your branch, and you just do a transfer like you're paying a Bell bill. It's free. You can do it a day or two before closing. No stress. Then you can take a picture. The teller gives you a picture. You email the picture. We see the money in our account. We close the deal. Is that a nice way to actually do it? So we really try to eliminate the stress. And if you've ever sold a property, sometimes lawyers will put a certified check into your account. Well, unfortunately, the bank will usually hold that for 10 days. We don't do that. We transfer the money electronically. It's in your account the next morning, no hold. And so you'll see that when you come, our fees are incredibly competitive, but we offer all those things extra. Also, the minute we're registered, you get an email saying, congratulations, the deal has closed. Whether it's 11 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you get an email right away, the deal has closed. The reason we have 35 offices is because buyers need to go someplace to pick up the keys. If you're selling, we have a different solution. We give our sellers a lockbox. They leave the key in the lockbox. We give the buyer lawyer our code, and the buyer just goes to the house after closing, and the keys are right there. And by the way, we let them keep the lockbox because it's cheaper for a lockbox than to courier keys to a buyer lawyer. So, you know, we're constantly trying to find ways to make a real estate deal more simple and efficient for people. And that allows me to have time to answer questions. People are always asking me questions, and it gives me the chance during the day to do that. And I always say to clients, you can come and see me in my office, but they say they'd rather not. They like the idea of people coming to the house. Okay, so I got a number of topics to talk about. First, I'm going to talk about investing, buying from a builder. How many of you have bought a pre-construction condominium from a builder? Okay, so you've done it. I'm going to go through it quickly, because how many of you have heard of situations where after 2 or 3 years, the project is not being built? And all the builder has to do is give you back your deposit, and it's done. So, all those people who bought 3 years ago and are getting their deposit back, they're out of the market now because, you know, they bought. So, how do you protect yourself when you're buying from a pre-construction? Number one is the reputation of the builder. So, you know, when you deal with a builder that's closed deals, that's built on time, that is 3/4 of everything. Because every builder agreement is the same. They're not fair. They can change the finishing, they can change the layout, they can have delays, and there's nothing you can do about it. So the reputation of the builder is so important. I believe Hunter is coming today to speak to you. Top reputation for many years on everything he sold. That's half the battle, is the reputation of the builder. So I always say to people, go to something else they finish, and go talk to the people, and just ask them, did they finish on time? And did they correct all the problems within the first year? As long as you get a good answer, that's half the battle when you buy from a builder. But you have to check on things. So on the adjustments, you know, you have to ask, what is the limit of the extra charges? In my experience, the extra charges should be 2% maximum of the total amount. So if you're paying $500,000, the extra charges should be $10,000. So when you see things like levies, development charges, water meter charges, the total shouldn't be more than 2%, but you've got to check to make sure there are caps on everything. And it's usually section 14 of every builder agreement, and you should just be upfront at the sales office. I want to see what all the caps are. And good builders will lay it all out for you right there in the sales presentation center. Check about parking space and locker, making sure that it's in the contract. The right to assign. So the right to assign means if you can't close in 3 or 4 years, you want to be able to maybe transfer the property. Most agreements say you can't do it, but many builders will give you a limited right to assign for a fee. You want to make sure that's in your contract. Finally, the right to lease during occupancy. So occupancy is about an 8-month period before registration where you have to start paying rent, but you're not closed. And so it's during this time, if you're investing, you want to be able to rent it during this time. You're going to need that right in the contract. If it's not, the builders may not give it to you. So then you're paying this rent, and you're getting no income during this 8-month period. So I wanted to show you just how they calculate the occupancy payment. So let's say you bought a unit for $500,000, and you paid deposits of $100,000 up till now. So you owe the builder $400,000, and we come to occupancy. So how do they calculate the rent? The biggest one is the interest on the money you owe. So you owe $400,000, multiply it by 3%, it's about $1,000, $1,100 a month. That's part of your rent. The second part is your maintenance fee. So your maintenance fee you can calculate as soon as you get the papers, might be another $300 a month, and then your share of property taxes, maybe another $200 a month. So you see that $1,600 is rent that you have to pay during occupancy. You can figure out as soon as you buy your unit what your occupancy rent is going to be. But more important, you see why you want to be able to rent it during occupancy. So you're getting some money in instead of money going out. Okay, after closing, you do this yourself. You get a mortgage, you pay the bank, you pay the maintenance fees to the corporation, and you pay property taxes yourself. Does that help you a little bit with understanding the occupancy fee, where it comes from? So people always ask me about the HST rebate, so I'm just going to take you quickly through the math. How many of you have seen this before? The HST rebate? So if you haven't, I'll take you quickly through the math. So if you buy a condominium from a builder today, that's for $400,000, it always says HST included. But let me explain to you what HST included means. What it means is the real price is $378. That's the real price. And then you add HST, which is $49,000, 13%. So the total is really $427. That's the real price. However, the buyer, if they're moving in themselves, is entitled to what the government calls the HST rebate. In this example, the HST rebate is $27,000. So when you're buying from a builder for $400,000, what you're really saying to the builder is, I'm moving in, and I'm going to give you my right to the $27,000. So instead of paying you $427 on closing, I'm paying you $400,000. So you see, when people call me up and said I didn't get my rebate on closing, I said, yes, you did. It was in the price. It was already in the price. You understand? You did get the rebate because you're only paying $400,000. But you see, let's say you're an investor and you're going to rent that unit out instead. Well, if you're renting the unit out, then the builder is not going to give you that HST rebate. Instead, you're going to have to pay the builder $427,000 on closing. The good news is you're entitled to a rental rebate. Same amount, $27,000, but you've got to apply for it after closing directly to CRA. People who use me to close, I have the best rebate specialist in the city, and he's within 4 weeks you get your money back. But you're still going to be out of pocket that $27,000 for 30 days. So you have to be prepared for that as an investor. If you're moving in yourself or your child is moving in, you won't have to do that. But if you're renting it, you have to be prepared for it. Is that okay? You get that? Okay, great. Terrific. Okay, our next topic is resale condominium. So many times I'm asked to do a status certificate review on a resale condominium. So I'm going to tell you what I look at or look for when I'm reviewing a condominium status certificate, so you'll know the right questions to ask yourself when you're buying a condominium. So any condominium, the first question you ask is this: have there been any sales in the last 3 months that closed? Because if somebody tells me that 4 units in that building closed in the last 3 months, what does that tell me? It means 4 lawyers, 4 lenders have already looked at the paperwork and they've all approved. So 80% of the time, that's telling me this is a good building. And that should be the first question you ask. Are there any units that have closed in the last 3 months? The corporation number. Do you notice how every corporation has a number beside it? 1,500, 1,700, 1,900. You know why that is? It's because in 1967, they registered the very first condominium. And they've been increasing by number ever since. So right now in the Toronto area, there are 2,800 condominiums. So if your number is 2,700 and something, this was built, registered in the last year. As soon as you tell me the number, I can tell you when it was built. If it was number 2,000, it was about 8 or 9 years ago. If it was number 300, it's about 45 years ago. You've got an old building. Okay, but you need to know that. You need to ask, what was the corporation number? That will tell you. If you're in a York region, which is anything north of Steeles, Richmond Hill, Vaughan, there's about 1,500 buildings. If you're out in Mississauga investing, they also have about 1,400 buildings. So remember, the higher the number, the newer the building. And that's an easy guide to know because the reserve fund doesn't need to have as much money because, you know, roofs don't have to be replaced for 20 or 25 years. Who's the property manager? You know, they're very good property managers. Brookfield, First Service, Dell. When I see there's a good property manager, I have confidence the board of directors is being given good advice, and you should ask who the property manager is as well. In a resale, you want to always walk and stand in the locker and the parking space. Not every parking space is the same. Pillars, equipment from the ceiling that's going to leak all over the roof of your car. Walk and stand in the parking space and the locker. Pets. Okay, some buildings, older buildings, do not allow pets at all. Newer buildings have weight restrictions on pets, 20 pounds, and these are legal, 25 pounds. Now the big topic of the day is marijuana, cannabis. That's the new topic of the day. Buildings don't know what to do. They're starting to pass rules that will forbid marijuana smoking and growing cannabis plants in condominiums. This is going to be the new, all summer you're going to hear about this because the law is going to change in September. And you'll check to see if there's any lawsuits or special assessments against the building. How many of you know what a special assessment is? Is it good or bad? Bad. It means the board of directors has not budgeted well and they need extra money. So these are the things that are always that you need to ask for. Kitec plumbing. So if the building was between 1995 and 2007, there's a possibility that the piping is Kitec. So even though it hasn't failed, the rule of thumb is you have to expect $3,000 to $5,000 to replace that plumbing in your unit. $3,000 to $5,000. So I tell people just adjust your purchase price by $3,000 to $5,000, and it's a decent deal, and just do it and get it done. Finally, there's 2 things you have to worry about: how much money's in the reserve fund and what should be in the reserve fund. So you see, with every condominium, they have something called a study, where engineers and accountants go in and they say, okay, we're going to project out 30 years how much should be coming into the reserve fund every year to make future repairs. And this is updated every 3 years because it's very hard to predict. So it doesn't matter. People say to me, how much should be in the reserve fund? It really has to be a straight line. So if the reserve fund I see is $1 million, and then I look at the study, and the study says there should be $3 million, then it's a problem. If the study says there should be $1 million, everything is fine. So you want to make sure that the amount of money in the reserve fund matches what should be in the reserve fund. There's no rule that says has to be $1 million, have to be $500,000. It has to match what the engineers have said with the accountants should be in the reserve fund. So that's how I look at a resale condominium, and those are the questions you should ask whenever you're buying a resale condominium. Okay, now resale homes. So, my number 1 thing is go talk to the neighbors. okay? Because sellers are liars and they're not going to tell you it. And so what do I mean? If you have time and you're buying a house, you should go to the neighbors and first of all ask them, have there been any repair trucks at this house that I'm interested in that's for sale? Maybe they had a flood in the basement that they're not telling you about. So you're going to want to ask the neighbors about that. You also may want to ask the neighbors about stigmas like murder or suicide, or my favorite, crazy neighbors. Because no seller will ever tell you about a crazy neighbor. You buy a house with a crazy neighbor, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a problem because sellers do not have to disclose crazy neighbors. So this is why I always say to speak to neighbors. Also Google the property address. Because if there's ever been a murder or a suicide or something going on the property, maybe an illegal grow house, should show up on the internet. Go to the house. Of course, you're going to have a proper home inspection. You're going to have a proper financing condition. And most people now are including clauses about murders, suicides, or grow houses. Always put in that you want 2 sets of keys and garage door openers and everything. So make sure you get it. And make sure you find out what's rented in the house. Okay, so if you have a good agent, and look, Jas and his team, they'll check all this stuff for you. I'm just giving you high-level overview. This is what I see as problems on real estate. Okay, next. Now we're going to go to the landlords. Okay, how many of you have ever qualified a tenant? Okay, this is the big secret here, because how many of you have had experience with a bad tenant? Okay, so you see, once you have a bad tenant, it's very hard to evict. So the trick is to properly qualify them in the first place. And so just a couple of tips that I'm going to give you. Always advertise that you do background and credit checks. That will eliminate half of the bad application. So you've got to say that. We do background and credit checks. That has to be in every ad. Also, make sure the tenant pays for utilities, because that's an extra credit check. The utility companies are going to check their credit to get them to pay utilities. So even if you made a mistake, the utility companies are going to find out. So they should always pay utilities. Check tenants on social media. See, pets are the biggest problem with tenants, because if a tenant lies and says, I don't have a pet, and then you rent them the house and they bring 2 dogs, there's nothing you can do. Even if they lie, and even if the lease says no dogs, it doesn't matter. That's an illegal clause. So people always ask me, how do you check? I say, get your 10-year-old to go on Facebook. If they've got a pet, there'll be a picture of them with the dog on Facebook. And I wrote this in an investment magazine. And I had a woman call me up 3 weeks later, and she said, I rented my house in Hamilton 6 months ago. I said, okay. And I said, are they paying the rent? She said, yeah. So I said, what's the problem? Well, I read your article and I checked Facebook. I said, okay. On Facebook, there's a picture of this woman with this humongous pig on a leash. So she says to me, is there a pig in my house? And she wasn't talking about the woman's husband. So I said, well, it's 6 months, go pretend you're changing the batteries and the smoke alarms, go into the house. So she goes into the house, she calls me back, there's a pig sleeping in one of the bedrooms. You have to understand, I'm laughing. But she asks me a very good question. She says, can I evict for having a pig in the house? Good point. I said, I'll be honest with you, maybe Hunter knows better, but I don't know the bylaws in Hamilton. She went to City Hall in Hamilton. In Hamilton, certain pigs can be licensed pets. That pig was licensed, nothing she could do. Check Facebook when you're qualifying. Check Facebook, Instagram, whatever the hell. Your kids are better than me. Let them help you qualify the tenant. Some people will interview tenants where they live. Another favorite of mine is don't speak to the current landlord. Speak to the prior landlord. The current landlord will lie to get rid of them. So you want to speak to the landlord before first. Okay, human rights. Very important. Also comes from my landlord guide. You've got to be very careful when you turn down a tenant, because if they say you turned them down because of race, religion, or color, they can take to the Human Rights Board. Another left-wing tribunal that is very difficult. One case, a woman found out that she wasn't rented because she had 3 teenage boys. and the landlord didn't want 3 teenage boys in the place. That is discrimination based on family status. She got $5,000 from the Human Rights Tribunal. So now you see how difficult that is. So these are the magic words. You want to turn down a tenant? We prefer another. Or, we're still reviewing applications. How many like that one? Elegant. Just use it every time. Trust me. Because they can't get you for anything. There's no discrimination. You don't have to say anything else. Anything else you say is going to get you in trouble. So just say this, and it's enough. Okay. Now, you've heard about the new government lease. How many of you have read the new government lease? Okay, so, is it pro-landlord or pro-tenant?
Pro-tenant.
Horrible. Pro-tenant. So, let's understand this. You have to use it. After April 30th, or after April 30th, you're supposed to use it. So, let's look at the penalty. So let's say, how many of you have your own lease that you use? Yeah. So they're good leases that landlords have today. They're the same as all leases. Half of them are illegal. You understand? Half the provisions in most landlord leases today are not legal. They were never legal. I'll give you an example. The tenant agrees to pay the first $100 of repairs. Not legal. The tenant agrees to pay $100 for an NSF check. Not legal. $20 plus whatever the bank charges you. But landlords get away with it. Now they hate this because they can't do this anymore because of the government lease. But let's look at the penalty. Here's the penalty. Let's say you use your lease. You still use it. And then a few months later, the tenant says, I heard about this government lease. I want this government lease. Well, you have 21 days to give them the government lease. And if you don't, the tenant can hold back 1 month's rent. In other words, they can cost you 1 month's rent if you don't give it. But that's it. That's the only penalty. Many private landlords tell me, oh, I'm going to keep using my lease. To hell with this government lease because most of my tenants are not going to ask me for it. But if you want to be 100%, on the level, you should be using the government lease. So, what should be in the government lease? This is my no smoking, no marijuana, and no growing cannabis clause. And this is very important to have in every lease now because the law is changing. As you know, people will be able to grow 4 cannabis plants in their home or even an apartment once the law passes here in Ontario. So how many of you think this clause should be in a lease? It should be in every lease. I gave this to you in the handout. And so you see that even if you use the government lease, you're going to want to add clauses to the government lease. Another one is first and last month's rent. You see, under the government lease, you can only ask for last month's rent. What good is that? This is my first and last month's rent. And so what I wanted to just tell you, in my landlord guide that you're going to get, are 7 pages of additional clauses that you can attach to the government lease which will protect you. And they're all legal. Things like no Airbnb, things like following all the condominium rules. Everything you need is in that schedule, and it's in my landlord guide that you're going to be able to give. You're welcome. Thank you very much this evening. Okay, so this is the biggest problem with residential tenancies today. You can only rent 1.8% this year, and it'll be low every year. And so the biggest complaint landlords have is my tenant is paying 30% below market. How many of you have this? So even though you read in the papers the rents keep going up, my tenant is sitting there not paying. And so how can I get rid of him? Unfortunately, there's very few ways to get rid of a tenant. They're paying the rent. There is the family reason, but you have to show that you really need the place, and you have to stay for a full year, and now you have to pay 1 month compensation to the tenant. It's hard. And if you're selling a place with a tenant, it's even harder. So what I say to people, that's not easy, and the place is a mess. The tenant doesn't have to allow staging. The tenant doesn't have to allow an open house. And so my advice is always pay the tenant, find them another place to live, and then sell your property. It's not cheap, but it's a better solution. You'll make more money selling your house if you do that. There is no legal way to evict. everything that people do is just penalties and fines from the government. So remember that. If you have a question, you have my card, you can send me an email. I've been doing this for too long, but that's my advice to you for
Question.
Yes.
So if I have a tenant and I want to kick him out, if I tell him I want it for myself,
If you truly need it for yourself, and it's the end of the lease, you have to give the tenant 60 days notice. So if you gave it today, it would be August 31st. But you have to, in good faith, be moving in. You have to stay there for 1 year minimum, or the fine is $25,000. So that's how you do it. And you have to pay the tenant a 1 month penalty in rent to do that. So it's possible, but I can tell you, tenants don't go. They fight this, and the reason they fight it is they have nowhere to go. The vacancy rate in Toronto is 1%, so they have nowhere to go. So they will fight you.
okay, my next question is what if the lease runs out?
I'm sorry? Makes no difference if the lease term is up because the lease automatically becomes month to month forever. Okay, so how does the tenant terminate? The tenant just has to give you 60 days notice to terminate a lease. How do you terminate a lease? You got to have a reason. And so these are all the reasons. I've given them to you. Non-payment to rent, bad conduct, family, buyers moving in, late payments, and you're renovating or demolishing. These are the only reasons you can evict a tenant in Ontario today. Now I'm going to show you what's involved when you want to terminate somebody for non-payment of rent. The easiest way to terminate. Somebody's not paying you rent. This is the process. 14 days notice. So let's say you served the notice today, June the 20th. Okay, get out July the 4th. They don't get out July the 4th, you got to go to the board. $170, 30 days. It's now August the 4th. You win. Let's say you win. Takes 5 days to get the order. We're August the 9th. You read the order. The tenant has 11 days to pay. Now it's August 20th. They don't leave August 20th. You got to go to the sheriff. $450. And now it's September the 20th. When did we start? June the 20th. All right. So you see, 90 days. If everything is perfect. How many of you have heard of these professional tenants? Oh, you know, I'm sick. I got to get a lawyer. I'm in a hospital. You understand? This is why you have to qualify tenants properly to begin with, because otherwise it's a mess to kick them out later. I always say to use a paralegal. You don't need a lawyer for this. Paralegals are very good. They know the landlord and tenant board, and they won't make mistakes. You got to get a good paralegal to help you. Let's say the tenant agrees to leave early, and they don't, then it's much quicker to get an eviction. So many of you may buy a multi-residential unit, like maybe a triplex or a fourplex, as an investment. Those are good investments. But to protect yourself, you have to realize that you're actually buying a business. When you buy a fourplex, you're buying a business. And so you're going to want to see the leases, the rent roll, the income, and the expenses before you make a decision. So it's not just a condition on a home inspection. You're going to want to add up all the numbers, look at all the expenses, see the cap rate, and figure out, you know, how much money you're going to make. So you have to make it conditional on doing that. And then you're going to want to make sure you get something from every tenant. It's called an acknowledgement. So you want every tenant to sign a piece of paper that says, this is how much I pay in rent. I paid the last month rent. And most important, I have no claim against the land. So this is something we put in every agreement. This way you take over and the tenant can't say, well, the other landlord promised me this, this, and this. You know you have nothing to worry about. Some other extra clauses in the agreement, the landlord won't sign new leases before closing without your permission. And they will tell the tenant to pay you the rent after closing. Yes, so did you learn something this evening? You're very welcome. So I really wanted to keep to my time. And so, as I said, I will stick around at the end to answer any questions that you have, but I did want to turn the floor over to our next speaker. Thank you very much,
I would like to give a big round of applause. Again, just to repeat, we have our next two speakers coming up shortly. Mark is going to stick around. We're going to be having desserts, coffee, and conversations after this. There's a lot of questions, and only for the sake of time and everybody, we're going to be doing the Q&A after. If you do have burning questions for Mark, which a lot of people probably do, write them down so you don't forget. We'll cover it all. We can help him out with most of them because most of your questions are typically around the same subjects of getting people out or how to deal with certain things. But if you do have something that obviously would require an expert opinion, he's here for us. So again, thank you so much, Mark. We really appreciate it. I'm going to be introducing the rest of the panel. To my right is my business partner of over 10 years, Jas Takhar. You all know him. If anybody has ever done a deal here or tried to do a deal or didn't do a deal because of any reason, you've gone through this craziness and this process. And, you better have it. It's as good as it gets. So Jas is actually going to be going through a Q&A with Mr. Hunter Milbourne. Mr. Hunter Milbourne to my left has been in the business for over 40 years. He actually, so a warm welcome for Mr. Milbourne. Hunter is the CEO of Milbourne Real Estate, which is a brokerage that represents over 20% of the Greater Toronto area's pre-construction sales. To put that into perspective, it's over 8,000 units per year that he markets and sells for developers and builders. So in our last event where the CEO of Greybrook was here, Sasha, and they built the playground, it's Mr. Milbourne's group that was responsible of all the planning and everything that goes into those pre-sales and getting that building sold out in a specific amount of time so the developer can reach their pre-construction requirements and get everything done. So it's a tremendous task in any given market because the market's not always as crazy as it is now. But through the last 40 years, through the ups and downs, you've obviously done a stellar job to keep continuing to be where you are. And we're going to have his insight here tonight as to where this whole craziness of the market is going. A lot of you have those questions. And Jas is going to lead through those questions, get some of those answers. If you have your own questions for Mr. Milbourne, he's here to answer them. So if you have something, jot it down. We're going to be in the cafeteria area, and he's more than approachable. It's amazing to see how somebody who's so successful still puts in the time to answer questions from every single one of us. Because everybody in here is an investor, has been an investor, or will shortly be an investor. So they're here for us. Charles JQ is one of the directors of sales for Mr. Milbourne. And Charles represents a few projects that we've worked with extensively in the past little while. We've had tremendous success with. And we're honored that they've actually released and given us an exclusive opportunity that he's going to cover off tonight with your assistance. So a warm welcome to all three. My job here is done.
Since we're all in the topic mood, how about a round of applause for my partner?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So how's everyone feeling?
Good.
How's Mark? Good. Brought some good value.
Yes.
Awesome. Again, thank you, Hunter. Thank you, Charles. So today, again, we wanted to talk a little bit about not only Hunter's experience, but a lot of his strategies that he's used and seen thousands upon thousands of investors use as well. We'll speak with Charles JQ as well about an exclusive investment opportunity. So why don't we just kind of dive in and like Simeon mentioned, afterwards we'll have tons of time for coffee and conversations. They have dessert coming, help us finish it, because otherwise I'm going to eat a lot of it, so I want to make sure that we get to it. So why don't we just dive right in. Hunter, I really wanted to make sure that the audience kind of got a feel for how long you've been doing this for. So when did you start? Like, when did you start in this business? And
one day you wake up and finish school and you have a student loan and a Volkswagen and you say, okay, now what? And it's funny how during your career people say things to you. And I remember, hearing something once, under all lies the land, and so I thought, well, how do people make money? How do people get rich? You can look at the stock market, you can look at the real estate market, you can go be a lawyer, you can go be a doctor, but that doesn't work as well as it used to. So I always had a love for real estate, and without any money or without any real skills, the easiest thing to do to begin with is to start selling it. And someone said, nobody likes a generalist, so if you're going to do something, you've got to specialize. And if you're going to specialize, just decide you're going to be in the top 5% of your field. And I thought that was pretty good advice. So in the mid-'70s, we decided that we were going to specialize in pre-construction condo sales. When there was 4 projects on the market in Toronto, and we had 2 of them. And it wasn't easy, it wasn't difficult to be in the top 5% of the field at that time because nobody else was trained. Another good piece of advice was get a lot while you're young. You could take that either way. It'll take a minute to get through the audience. Think about that one. So in the beginning, we sold real estate. We made income from fees. We took the money from the fees. We bought real estate. And someone said to me once, the best thing about real estate is you let the years work for you. I mean, how many people here have invested in the stock market? How many people have lost money in the stock market? How many people know of somebody else who had a stock that went to zero? How many people know of a piece of real estate that went to zero? So, you start to think about fundamentals. So, the other thing is, Warren Buffett is one of the world's best investors, and he has 2 rules for investing. Anybody know rule number 1?
Don't lose money.
Don't lose your money. Very good. Rule number 2.
See rule number 1.
See rule number 1. Very good. I love this audience. But think about it. I mean, here's a guy who's one of the richest guys in the world who's, there's nothing strategic about that. There's nothing offensive, not in a bad way, but just in terms of offense versus defense. It's all defense. So how do you take that philosophy and turn it into a corollary rule for real estate? So what I got out of that was, number 1, is don't buy more than you can afford. Because I think one mistake people do in real estate is they'll buy a property, a couple of years goes by, the mortgage goes down, the values go up, and they say, gee, I could I'll leverage this one, I'll mortgage up and go buy another one. And if you carry that too far, then eventually, because real estate market is cyclical. So, if you don't buy more than you can afford, and by default, don't sell at the wrong time, then you're not, what? Losing. So if you're not losing, what are you doing? Winning, right? So it's really not that complicated. So don't buy more than you can afford, don't sell at the wrong time, and then by default, you're going to win.
Hunter, you as an investor, because you yourself invested in real estate, what strategies do you specifically implement when investing in real estate? I.e., for example, I know you do obviously a lot of pre-construction, but what other types of strategies do you use?
Well, I think it's you can if you have enough time, you kind of throw a dart and buy some real estate, and if you keep it long enough and don't make mistakes, you're going to win. But if you want to outperform the averages, then you have to look for different sectors or different asset classes. So one of the things that emerged over the last couple of years for us was student housing. I mean, there's always been student housing. It's people who went to university, stayed in a residence or whatever, but it was always rental. So what happened was about 4 or 5, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we started to sell 200-300 unit buildings that were student housing buildings. And if you think about it, and the story was pretty much the same, whether it was Ottawa or Oshawa or U of T or York or Waterloo, 20, 30, 40,000 students, 600, 700, 800 beds for first-year students. It was totally undersupplied. And just an incessant demand. Every year, those first-year kids get kicked out. The second-year ones have nowhere to go. So it's a relentless demand for tenants.
So when you're analyzing an investment opportunity, is it just as simply as looking at it from a supply and demand perspective, or what are some other things you might look at?
Whenever you can find a situation where the demand really, really exceeds the supply, then the appreciation for rents and the values and those types of things are going to maybe appreciate a little bit quicker and than average. And the reason Charles came to join us tonight was that he's led the sales programs on most of these. So maybe just give an example of how that would. How one would work.
So what's happening, for example, Charles, in certain areas of Southern Ontario?
Well, what we're seeing across the board in Southern Ontario for student housing is that the top universities have a major drought of supply for housing. And the schools are only providing housing for first-year students because they're not really in the business of providing housing. They're in the business of building their campus, building their enrollment. So whether you're looking at Western University or Queen's University, University of Waterloo and Wilfrid Laurier, UOIT and Oshawa, you typically need to find a school that has a minimum of 10,000 students, and that's a university as opposed to a college, And what you'll find is that there's student ghettos forming around the schools.
Do you want to elaborate on that? Like, what does that mean, like, in terms of student ghettos?
Well, so because the demand is so high for residences, and a lot of the students are traveling to go to these schools, right? So you might come from Toronto and go to Kingston, so you're going to rent. And they don't have anything for you in first year, so you're going to maybe group together with your friends and find a place for second year, but there's no options available. So the owners of the properties are quickly finding out that you can put 4 students in a basement and rent out the rest of the house, and you'll fill it with students, and it's going to be constantly rented with new tenants coming in, every 4 years or 3 years, so you don't need to worry about the tenant that's going to stay forever, and how am I going to get these guys out with these, rental rates that are held for the long run. So what's happening is property owners around the schools are taking advantage of this huge demand, and they're renovating these homes or not renovating them, and that's why it's called the student ghetto. Like at Queen's University, there's a cockroach award, and the cockroach award gets published in the newspaper.
Oh, not an award that you want.
Not even the landlord. No,
yeah, I didn't think so.
And it's for the worst property. It's for
Sure.
and so you have some of the smartest students, young academics in the country, and they're living in the cockroach award house, right? Like it's unbelievable. So what started to happen is we started to see owner-operators of retirement residences that really love stability and cash flow, because the baby boom generation is going to peak in 2025. You know exactly where your tenant's coming from. There's a huge demand there. We're starting to see those types of developers moving into the student housing business. And we're starting to see pension funds moving into the student housing business. Like the CPPIB, which is the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, which invests for over half of Canadians through the pension plan, they've been investing $2 billion every year for the past 4 years into student housing. So, and it's because of this diversification that Hunter's talking about. Like Hunter could talk to you about resort properties. He's got investments worldwide, across Canada. Like how much land do you own across Canada, if you don't mind sharing?
11,000 acres.
11,000 acres of land, right? And
We develop golf courses and ski resorts. Like, and keep in mind, my full-time job is a real estate broker. So this was my avocation, my part-time job. So, we never really became a builder or developer ourselves, but we kind of backed into being a principal in an equity position in different projects, whether it be a couple of golf courses, a couple of ski resorts in British Columbia. We have a real estate business in Dubai. So, it's grown beyond my wildest dreams just because the industry kind of grew up around us.
Hunter, what's your outlook on the Southern Ontario market? Like you've obviously been in and talking about the market
I think
for a very long time.
you can't talk about the economics without talking a little bit about politics.
Yeah.
So I think most people I know are socially liberal and fiscally conservative. So, when the Liberals took over, whenever it was 8 or 10 years ago, the provincial debt was $100 billion. And today it's $350 billion. So Ontario has the largest debt of any non-sovereign entity in the world. So other than the country, Ontario. So like it or not, whether you like Mr. Ford personally or not, I think that what he's going to do is balance the books and privatize a lot more things. The other thing that I believe, and I think this is pretty reliable information, is sometimes it's getting a little bit of information ahead of the curve. What would happen if the foreign buyers tax went away in the GTA market? Would everybody think that prices would start to go up a little quicker again?
Yes.
So, would that be a good thing or would it be a bad thing? But if you're a lot of people said when those taxes came in British Columbia and Ontario, it was discriminatory. It wasn't really foreign buyers that were driving the prices going up. Foreign buyers are 4, 5, 6% of the market. So that's not enough to really move the dial.
And we know, because whenever someone invests through us, we have their ID and we have their SIN numbers. We know exactly where they're coming from. So with the 20% market share of all condo sales, like we did 8,000 sales almost last year, we're seeing all the documents, we're seeing all the paperwork. It's not foreign buyers, it's locals.
Yeah, it's 4, 5, 6%. But what's really causing price to go up is the lack of supply. Like 5, 6, 7 years ago, it took about 18 months to get a project approved in Toronto. Today, it's 4 years, average, sometimes longer. We're going to be working on a project next year, and it was 16 years in the approval process.
People complain about a year or two, right?
Yeah. So, we're involved in a little project in Rosedale. It's 26 units, and it's 3.5 years. It's a little 4-story building, 100 meters from the subway. So it's very difficult. I mean, when a project comes out for sale, I mean, you don't see the background of it, but it's been a long time to get through.
Going back to you, Charles, I know you've been spending a lot of time in Kitchener, Waterloo.
Yeah.
What's been going on there? Why have you been
It's
there for?
amazing. It's amazing.
So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm going to go back quickly to student ghetto.
Okay.
Because it all
It's gonna be the buzzword for the evening.
well, it all started, like, the growth in Kitchener Waterloo. For anybody who's been there recently and has seen it 5 years ago or 10 years ago, there's been a boom in Kitchener Waterloo, and it started with the universities, right? So Silicon Valley down in California started because of Stanford, right? It was a high tech, computer oriented. Hewlett Packard came out of there, right? Some major tech companies came out of there and established around the university because the talent was coming from the university. So the area between the two schools, you've got Wilfrid Laurier and University of Waterloo, and altogether they've got over 60,000 students. Plus you've got Conestoga College just down the way, and they're all within about a 10-minute walking radius of each other. So we've got this incredible case study here where we've got this huge student population of very intelligent students, like, entrance marks for the computer science and engineering program is 95% to get in for University of Waterloo. And that program is number 23 in the world, right? So what happened was all the homes, which are just like neighborhood post-war bungalows in between the two schools, were student ghetto. And the city came in and the community, like if you're living there and you're raising a family and you've got student ghetto landlords, they don't need to take care of the property because it's being rented out because there's so much demand. So the property is run down, but it's still being rented out. Mm-hmm. So the neighborhood's disheveled. And so the local community was talking to the local politicians and putting a lot of pressure on them. And so what they did was they put a lodging bylaw in place to regulate the housing. So, and this is important because that created a shift between the two schools to go from student ghetto to purpose-built student accommodation, which is what the institutional investors are interested in.
So sorry, when you say purpose-built, is that essentially saying licensed student housing? Is that similar?
Well, so now that the bylaws are in place, if you own one of those homes, you have to get it licensed. And in order to pass the licensing qualifications, you've got to take out all the asbestos, you've got to take out the knob and tube wiring, you've probably got to fix up the basement so that there's an exit, so that it passes the fire code requirements. You've got to get inspected by the fire department, you've got to get inspected by electrical safety standards, and you have to get a criminal record check every year. So that's what you need to do in order to qualify, and that's a major, like if you've just invested in a home, like this is going to be happening in Hamilton, next to McMaster University. The city of Hamilton is currently consulting with the city of Waterloo. So if you've just bought yourself this property right next to McMaster, that's great, but the fundamentals are going to change because there's going to be a bylaw put in place there. And you're probably going to need to rent out a home because these homes weren't built to be run as businesses. They weren't built to have 4 students living in the basement, right? So what's happened is, so to answer your question, the purpose-built student housing is more like a hotel, okay? Because they come fully furnished. The students show up, they've got their backpacks, they've got their laptops, they've got cutlery, a pillow, that's it. And they rent, and they pay premium rents. They pay higher rents because of that convenience. And they're typically buildings that have maybe 20 condos in them or more, or 20 apartments in them, and the apartments go anywhere from 5 bedrooms down to 1 bedrooms or studios.
Talk a little bit more about the quality of tenants. Obviously, they're students, but where are they coming from? Talk a little bit about that.
I think I know where you're going with that. So like, that's a big question that we get, right? Like you're renting to students. So, are they going to throw parties? Well, if you own a house that's disheveled.
Because I did throw some parties when I was
right,
a long time ago. But yeah.
I mean, if you're a landlord and you own a house that's sort of in bad condition, you can kind of expect it to be treated that way, right? And you can probably fit a lot of students in a house. But when you own a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom or a 5-bedroom apartment that's fully furnished, you can't. There's no room for that, right? The students that are renting those apartments are paying premium rents, and they're spending most of their time on campus. They leave to do anything, to go to the gym. All the amenities are basically on campus because the key is being walking distance to campus. So these students, these tenants, when you're investing next to the right university, they are the future leaders of the world. You're renting to the future MBAs, land use planners. You're renting to computer science engineer. Like the computer science and engineering program is so big out of Kitchener-Waterloo, out of University of Waterloo. They're coming out of that school and they're making $150,000 a year plus signing bonus. So you're dealing with young professionals. And the real tenant that's paying the rent is actually the parents most of the time. and all of the leases, like this. So we've got a few developer clients that specialize in student housing. This one developer is the biggest in Canada for owner-operated student housing, and they focus in Waterloo, and they're managing 4,000 beds. And so out of those 4,000 beds, all of them have guarantors on them, and that's the parents. So, you know, we saw the process for evicting a tenant and getting a tenant out, right? Out of the 4,000 beds for the past 15 years, they've never had to call the sheriff once. And the reason for that is because if you're mom and dad and you receive a phone call that says, you know, Susie just missed a rent payment, you're going to pay, right? Like that's your number one priority. This is your last chance to give them something and get them out of the house. So you're not. So we actually call them six pocket tenants,
Okay.
because you've got the student, you've got the parents, and then you've got the grandparents as well. Right?
And a lot of them foreign students as well. Like, do you see a lot of foreign students come in from outside of Canada, i.e. India, China?
Yeah, so University of Waterloo and Wilfrid Laurier. So University of Waterloo has 20% international students for the undergrad program and 40% for the graduate program, and they're paying 4 times the tuition. So when you see the parking lots, like they're driving nicer cars than you are, no offense. Your car's nice, but these guys,
It's amazing.
yeah, and they've got little Hello Kitties, and like, you can tell that something's going on, right? And it's the school that's attracting them, because University of Waterloo, like I said, the computer science and engineering program is number 23 in the world, right? So the other thing that's happening in Kitchener-Waterloo, so there's been a big transition between the two schools geographically, a big change from these little bungalows, post-war bungalows in student ghetto, to now purpose-built student housing. And what you'll see is that there's very little of these bungalows left, right? And now the bungalows are selling for $1.5 million because they're walking distance to school. So there's been a big transition there, but what you'll also see is that the local economy has changed as well. And those computer science engineering students that I was mentioning, they are graduating and they are earning $150,000 plus signing bonus, and they're going to work down the street at Google, because Google just put in their largest research and development office in Canada right there, and it's gone from 300 to 500 employees, and they're taking it to 1,000 employees over the short to medium term. So they've just bought their 3rd office building.
I wanted to quickly go back to how the leases are structured.
Sure.
Are they 10 months, 9 months, or is it full year? How does that all work?
Yeah, so we actually do, so students, you know, you go to school for 8 months and then summertime, right? So, but there's so much demand coming off of the schools, again, there's so little supply that you can sign full 12-month leases. And you actually see that across Canada at these top universities. With colleges, not so much, but with top universities, it's full 12-month leases. So what we're actually doing with this one developer that I mentioned that has this really big portfolio, they're doing a 3-year lease. A 3-year lease, and they have the option to opt out.
You know, most of the leases start May 1st. So you pay May, June, July, August. So you pay 4 months for the first 4 months that you don't need. You don't pay the, you know, they don't structure it so that, you know, they're at the end.
Like I went to Western like 13 years ago, and I paid full 12-month leases. And if I wasn't there in the summertime, it's just sitting there, right? But no one else is going to jump on my place. So that's just how it is. That's the environment.
And what I liked about like a student housing investment is the fact that you always get the turnover after every 3 years.
Yeah, with the new rent controls in place, it's nice to be able to bump up the rents. The rents are constantly going up. So I mentioned this whole portfolio. We'll be showing you something, a very special opportunity that Jas and Laura and their team have an exclusive on, because we've been working with them in the past on different projects.
Let's jump into that. Let's talk about
Sure.
that. So let's talk about 251 Lester.
So if you look at University of Waterloo and Wilfrid Laurier, there's University Avenue that connects the two schools, and they're literally like 10 minutes walking distance apart. Right in between those two schools, right off of University Avenue, is 251 Lester. So it's Phillip Street, Lester, Sunview, Hemlock, and then you're at Wilfrid Laurier. So those are the blocks. You're literally just a few blocks in either direction, and Lester's smack in the middle of both of those. So you're walking distance to both schools, AAA location, and this is the key. This is the key to investing in student housing, is you want to have a prime AAA location, because that's how you attract the best students, and that's how you get premium rent. And if there's more student housing that ever gets built, it'll never be as attractive as your location, because you're so close to campus. And this is literally the best location in Waterloo. The developer actually runs their property management office out of these buildings. And we're going to, Jas and Laura and your team, with this property, because we've worked on a few of them in the past, the developer says we want to start things off exclusively with you guys for 251 Lester.
We obviously definitely appreciate it, and all of our insiders do as well.
Yeah.
in terms of the property management, most people in this room live, 20-minute, 30-minute drive from here, still a little further out from Kitchener-Waterloo. How does it get managed? I mean, we're not going to be able to fix the toilets and at 2 o'clock in the morning. Talk to us about the management and some of the incentives that we were able to get from the developer.
So the developer owns and operates this huge portfolio. It's 4,000 beds. And they've got 2 brands that they operate it through. One is KW for rent, KW with number 4 and then rent. And the other one is Accommodate You, which is for their smaller, like 1-bedrooms and 2-bedroom product. And so they are professional landlords. So, I mentioned they never had to call the sheriff once, but if they have to go through any kind of a process as a landlord, they would act on your client's behalf, on your behalf, in your best interests as a professional landlord. Because being a landlord is like a part-time job. And depending on the type of property you have, it can be a lot more work or a lot less. Like condos are a little bit less. This is as hands-free and hands-off as it gets.
And they're offering 2 years right now, free property management, as well as placing the students in terms of tenant placements, doing all the lease agreements as well.
That's right. So if you're using a realtor, you're going to be paying 1 month's rent, and the realtors split it, right? There's a buyer realtor, and then there's your realtor that's representing you as the owner, and that's 8%, right? Like 1 divided by 12, that's 8%. So for 10%, they take care of not only finding the tenant for you and the screening and making sure the guarantor is in place, but also if your toilet breaks down or if you get locked out in the middle of the night, they're not going to call Jas. They're going to handle it themselves. They've got repair technicians that are going around. They run inspections on all the properties. They've got a huge infrastructure already set up and in place. So this is really the ideal scenario.
But again, for the first 2 years, there is no cost to that.
For the first 2 years, it's free.
It's free, and so it's handled for you, and that's done.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the actual units, square footage, approximate, how many bedrooms, what's the rent, how does that all work?
Well, these are really special because they're 5 bedrooms. And what that means is that the individual rent per bed is low, which is a very good thing because now we have a AAA location that's about as close as you get to both schools and the lowest rent possible for this type of purpose-built housing. So what you'll see is that the rents are about $670 per bed, which is, I think it's $3,350 per month.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a tremendous amount of rent, right? And it's 5 bedrooms, 2 washrooms. They've got the kitchen there, and if you go see them, they're fully tenanted. Like the vacancy rate on these things is 0.02%.
And they come fully furnished as well, not to cut you off, Charles, but they also come fully furnished.
That's right. And the tenants spend most of the time in their room. So they've got a room big enough for a desk, and they're there with their computer, and maybe they use the kitchen, and then they go to campus. And so the rest of the time is spent in their room. They've got a keypad code to lock up their rooms. And the building is really built like a school, right? It's got 1 elevator. It's got 2 staircases. This has been designed as a cash flow property. And it was designed so that the developer would actually keep this forever. And one of the only reasons that they're selling is actually because they're starting to invest in some really, really big developments that are a little bit closer to this new employment growth that's happening because there's a high-tech boom happening in Kitchener-Waterloo. There's actually more tech startups in Kitchener-Waterloo than anywhere else in North America. So there's more tech jobs in Kitchener-Waterloo than anywhere except for Charlotte, North Carolina. So they're doing a 6,000 unit project, and they've got an in-house construction team. So they've asked us to get together and sell off some of their portfolio this way.
So I just want to confirm and make sure everybody got it, that it's an existing building. There's probably about 25, 30 units in 251 Leicester. So it's not pre-construction, it's already existing. In fact, they've been renting out these units for a little over 7 years.
That's right. It's almost 10 years.
It's almost 10 years, okay.
So we've got the rents going all the way back. And what you see is that the rents have been going up. So there's a significant increase I think it's $25 per bed. That's happening, $25 monthly every year. That's going up. And so that's fairly significant.
So if you guys open up your folders, you'll see on the right-hand side, you'll see a pro forma that we've obviously worked out. We've been lucky enough, and our investors have been lucky enough to have sold out the previous 2 buildings within the last 6 to 8 months. And again, we were able to twist everyone's arm on the panel and the developers' arm to make sure that they release this exclusively for us. So again, if you look at the pro forma, as Charles mentioned, you'll see the gross rental income every month as $3,350. After you take away your property tax, your condo fees, again for the first 2 years from the developer, there is no management cost, there's no tenant placement cost. You take away your mortgage payment with your 20% down, you're left with over $800 a month net cash flow. And so, I mean, if you guys can kind of speak for that, is there anywhere, if you, as you look and compare to other areas or other types of anywhere right now, Charles, maybe you or Hunter, you can talk about comparing it to like a resale condo in the Greater Toronto area?
Or like a commercial plaza.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, but again, I don't think that there's a place that we know of right now that has just the same kind of focus and demand. And I think a lot of it is because of the school. Obviously, the school. The schools are very well reputation, and I mean, it's true. Everyone always thought Silicon Valley was the big generator of all these smart engineering graduates and people want to work for the high tech companies. But actually, I think a lot of the statistics are showing now that Kitchener-Waterloo is equal or bigger now than Silicon Valley.
These companies are saving on the land prices and the rents, and they're saving on with the Canadian dollar as well. So
it's actually nice because as I look around the room, there is a lot of people. There's a handful of people that have purchased, and they were one of the people that purchased the other previous buildings. And I know Paul, yourself and Sang got into one of the student housing. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how the process was and what you think, and if I know your mother-in-law's in the process of doing one now again. But
well, we just talked about it a little bit on the last
on the podcast.
So
yeah,
I invited anybody to listen to that podcast. I think it was fairly easy. I mean, they've spoken a lot about the aggregate demand in Waterloo, right? From the student profile that's coming in. It's not your typical university, and then those units rock grow from the actual university. So for a long term, coming from university myself, places that are like 5 minutes away are always going to be in high demand, right? So then the process was fairly easy. I mean, you guys set up from a finance perspective all the way down to the end. The propositions that you have with the property management, such forth, and the 2-year guarantee is, to me, and the rental guarantee, it's a no-brainer. Talked about already. I mean, it's again, the work that I do is literally just on the mobile app and checking everything out, and then knowing the cash flow. And when you look at the cash flow from a Southern Ontario perspective, 6-7% cash on cash, there's very hard on the fines to find that. So awesome. I think the numbers speak for itself. Right?
Yeah, what you see is that your income actually goes up by about $10,000 a year, right? So when you talk about what else could we be investing in, I mean, the types of people that we're talking to, a lot of them are saying maybe I could buy a commercial plaza if I partner up with a few other investors. And a lot of what we're seeing, like if you go to Oshawa, you're going to pay $2 or $3 million for a commercial plaza. You're going to have a convenience store. You're going to have a nail salon. Maybe you're going to have a vacancy. If a tenant turns over, you don't really know where that tenant's going to come from. And you're going to pay commercial rates on your mortgage. You're going to pay commercial insurance rates as well. So this is a lot simpler. I think everyone understands the fundamentals of the demand here and where all of your future tenants are going to be coming from and how and why the universities are growing. And it's residential rates on the mortgage, it's residential insurance rates, so it's a lot easier. And that commercial plaza in Oshawa, like we talk about cap rates, right? Because the cap rate takes the mortgage financing out of the equation, and with commercial that can really vary depending on the kind of deal that you do, right? So the cap rate is your net return without mortgage financing divided by your total purchase price. So the cap rates for a commercial plaza are like 3.5, 4%, right? And they're gonna be a $2 million investment, and you got to put a significantly higher deposit in, right? So these ones we do it with a 20% deposit, and the cap rate without mortgage financing is like 5.8%. So very strong. And the example that we're showing here, I know, Jas, you tend to be very conservative with your estimates, like you're putting everything in, land transfer tax and everything. Yeah. The example that you're showing here is actually the highest total investment amount that we have. We have options that are lower than that. So the numbers...
It's always depending on floors, if you go a little lower on floors. So we did choose the most expensive unit, yeah, exactly. just to work the numbers very conservative.
Exactly. And then when you plug in a typical mortgage rate, what you find is that you get about $10,000 cash flow per year. So if you're talking about the cash on cash, like this gentleman mentioned, the cash on cash is when you take your net cash flow, including your debt financing cost, which is your mortgage cost, and you divide that by the cash out of your pocket. So, if you're netting $10,000 a year and you divide it by the deposit, which I think is 120.
It's 5,000.
5,000 to start with, but the total 20% deposit would be 120,000.
Yeah.
So you're looking at an 8% cash-on-cash return, which is very strong, and that's without capital appreciation as well. So talking really strong returns. You can't really find that elsewhere. And you asked me about resale as well. So
Right.
I mean, a one-bedroom in Toronto right now, you're going to be paying $550,000 for a second-hand resale condo. And what's it going to rent for? Like $2,000, right? So here, you essentially have the same total investment, and the rent is well over $1,000 more per month, and that's where the cash flow is. Because if you're buying resale downtown Toronto, it's not cash flowing. You're going to be paying out of your pocket. It's not necessarily a bad investment, but this is an incredible opportunity for people who are looking for cash flow. They want the certainty. And what happens if the market crashes? There was actually a study done by a University of Stanford professor named Caroline Hawksby, where she traces every market recession and what happens to universities. And what happens is people will actually think this is a great time to go back to school because the labor market is taking a break. So we actually call it recession-proof real estate because demand at major universities actually goes up during recessions. And if you own a property there and your property value is based on the rent that you get, when demand goes up, your value goes up for the property. So while everyone else's values are going down, yours are actually going up. So this is a really, really good real estate investment because people often come to me, they know I'm in the business, they say, I want something that's going to cash flow, that's going to carry itself. There's really nothing else like this in terms of cash flow, and it's an amazing hedge against recessions as well.
Was there anything to
I
add?
was just going to say, if you talk about cap rates, I mean, often, you know, if you have a very high cap rate, typically it's in an area where you won't have as much appreciation in value. You have a lower cap rate because there's more demand. So if you use an example, let's say I want to go buy a retail store on Bloor Street. You know, there's so much demand. Like, you know, people would be happy to buy that and get a 2% return. You know, in a lot of big American cities or in Europe now, I mean, people are buying, you know, institutional trophy assets for 1.5%, 2% returns. So typically, there's always an inverse relationship between the cap rate and the rate of appreciation. So you buy something like that, and because it's so prime, you know, maybe you only get that 2% every year, but it's going to appreciate like crazy because everybody wants it. So when you sell it 5 or 10 years from now, you're going to end up averaging that 8, 10, 12, 14% return, which is the weighted average of what you do with a real estate investment. So it's called, in institutional terms, they call it an internal rate of return. So it's the weighted average between your cap rate, which is your cash return, and your reversionary value when you sell it, what's your overall return. So, but we've got a situation there where you've got a pretty high cap rate, and you've also got a very unique situation because it's also in an area of very high demand. So when you've got a high cap rate, and you've got and the income, because you aren't normally when you're buying something like that, you know, you've got a 10-year lease or 50, like the income isn't going to change. It's like buying a bond. Whereas here you get a pretty decent cap rate, and then every year the income goes up. So if you bought, like I would say also, if you make another argument, let's say now we're a 30-minute walk from the university, or 30, you know, just instead of 5 or 10 minutes. Like I would buy a condo all day long in Toronto versus a house in Waterloo that's 30 minutes from the school, because I think, you know, Toronto is going to grow faster, and the average appreciation for the average product in Toronto is going to way outperform the average appreciation for a place in Kitchener. But if you've got this little microcosm between the two universities, so you've got the high cap rate, and then you've also got the high appreciation. So that's kind of a unique situation.
You get the AAA location with the high cap rate. One of the reasons for that is because the developer, like I said, they're looking to expand. They need the cash flow. They've got an in-house construction company. They've got some huge projects that they're building. So it's basically like a bulk deal, right? It's because we have this product, we want to sell it fairly quickly.
You know, it was interesting when they came to us and they said, you know, we want to build bigger buildings. You know, we want to build more student housing, and we've got these other ones. We weren't ever planning on selling them, but we didn't really ever realize 10 years ago that the market demand would be there. And they're looking at us, and you know, do you think you can sell these? And they're, you know, trying not to smile too much. Yeah, we'll fight our way through somehow. You know.
Well, look, I mean, we here at the Real Estate Center believe in it so strongly that we're actually going to be offering a third year of free property management as well as tenant placement. Because again, we strongly believe in this investment opportunity, and we also want, you know, as Simeon mentioned at the start, you guys could have been anywhere today, but you did take action and come here, and so we definitely want to reward that action as well as your loyalty over the years, and so we are for anybody who puts in a reservation, fills up a reservation form, which I'll go over with you in a second, we're going to honor a 3rd year of free tenant placement and property management. Before I go over that, I wanted to again thank Hunter Milbourne and Charles JQ. Can you please give them a round of applause? In terms of, if you look to the left of your folder here, the real estate center folder, you'll see a reservation form. All you're doing is essentially, if you fill it out, hand it to Laura. If you can put up your hand, Laura, that's for her. You just fill it out, hand it to her. You're essentially just putting up your hand. Someone from our team will give you a call within the next couple of days to make sure that this is the right investment for you. Again, you're just putting up your hand, and we'll go over to make sure that, this is the right investment opportunity. You hand it to Laura.
I'll be outside those doors.
Fantastic. And she'll number it because we do have a certain number of units available that the developer gave us allocation for. But Hunter, you did have a point. I thought you...
No, this lady had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Perhaps, I know we're talking Kitchener and Waterloo, but perhaps just for a bit of insight and knowledge, you could comment on some other areas like Oshawa, where you have UOIT, which is growing very, very rapidly. I'm sure you guys are aware of that. You see the growth.
Yeah.
Could you perhaps comment on that as well?
I think all of these areas next, like UOIT is a great school. It's also a tech-focused school. And it meets that minimum threshold of about 10,000 students as a minimum threshold in terms of having enough demand to justify having purpose-built housing around the neighborhood. And if you're not looking at purpose-built, I think the main tip for you, aside from being as close to the university as possible, is to watch out for upcoming bylaws, because that's a big change that's happening, and it can throw off your whole business plan, because they'll force you to reno your house completely. And taking asbestos out of a post-war home is not an easy job. You basically got to take the house apart and retrofitting it so that you can lease out the basement, because none of these properties make sense unless you can lease out the basement. And they're still in really high demand, so they have high price points, so you have to put a high deposit in. You know, renoing the basement to put an extra exit or entrance, again, it's a big reno. It's a big job. So watch out for the bylaw, and make sure you're right next to the school. Make sure that it's a top university that has at least 10,000 students in it.
And to Mark's interest, when you purchase something like this in Kitchener-Waterloo, do all the eviction laws and regulations fall into place under a property management?
That's a great question.
Yeah, glad you have Mark here and the boys.
Look, the laws are the same all across Ontario. Have any of you been a landlord? Have you ever been called at 11 o'clock to go fix a toilet somewhere? It's horrible. One of the advantages of being and the first thing they teach you is the minute you have maybe 4, what they call them, doors, you want to get a property, because the property manager you have to pay them, but then they take care of all the headaches. They interview all the tenants. They know all the tricks. And one thing that I notice here is that there is a reputable property manager that deals with the tenants, qualifies the tenants, and does everything for you. And believe me, these guys take courses. I know. I went to a course once taught by homicide retired detectives. Okay, and you know what they were teaching property managers? How to spot liars. And I went because they asked me to speak, and I wrote all the tips in my landlord guide. But you know, it's some of the things you would think, oh yeah, it's easy. It's like they won't look you in the eye, if they fidget, if they change the subject, if they give short answers, they're lying. Okay, and that made sense to me, right? But then they said, if they're too polite or pleasant, they're lying. And you know, I never liked people that were happy all the time. I never liked those people. So what are you happy for? The world is not so nice all the time. Yes, all the property managers, they're just nodding their head. You know, then, no. Oh, there's nobody here. If the guy has writing on his t-shirt, he will not get along with the other tenants. And all the property managers. Now the best one, if it's a woman and she flips her hair back, she's lying. And I looked around the room, all the female property managers are going like this. But this is why you need good property managers. And that's why, you know, when you have a company that has experience and, you know, and you don't have to, it's worry-free, you know, it is a benefit. Trust me, if you've been a landlord, it is a benefit, okay?
We're gonna have, I know there's a lot of questions. Again, we're gonna have coffee and conversation, just for the sake of the room. I know some people are waving their folders and it's getting hot. I'm gonna bring back my partner and close it off. Again, thank you, boys. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And you're closing. I know you want to talk about YouTube.
Well, yeah, I want to talk on a couple things in closing. I'll take up just maybe about 2 more minutes of your time. For action items, we have such a huge, awesome lecture tonight from you, Mark. So thank you. I'm sure everybody found value, and I'm sure you're going to be having a lot of questions in a few minutes. If you need to reach out to Mark, there's a card in your folder for him directly. You can get to him through us if you're more comfortable.
And we're going to be sending out an email within the next 2 days.
All contact information.
All information that you got.
It's not a secret. You don't need to go through us. You can go through us if you're more comfortable that way. You can do whatever you want. You can get to Mark.
Yeah.
Mark is a big business. He always makes time for his clients. Action item number 1. Action item number 2. I can go like this. As far as condos are concerned, if you're interested in the product that was presented here tonight, there's always, every single time we do one of these, we always bring opportunities. No matter what it is. We're going to have something better. We get presented with over 80 projects a year. You guys all know that we do about 4 or 5 of these a year. So we're pretty stringent as to what we actually sell our clients because we're typically the ones managing it for you. And we're typically the ones buying in these projects with you. So we're pretty hardcore with what we put these gentlemen through to try to put this on our shelf. And we're very lucky and privileged to always have a supply of great product. So thank you for that. So if you need help with any of this, it's basic information, but fill it out completely and print it out. So we don't have
neatly. We've gotten a lot of reservation forms.
Take a minute.
Read the names and the phone numbers, and we never even were able to get a hold of
And don't get mad at us if it takes 2 days. Action item number 3, Charles. I know Hunter is available tonight. Hunter is not a person we can reach out to 24/7 because of his role, his responsibilities. But Charles, the director of sales for Millbourne, can be reached out to. So if you need to get in touch with Charles, please get in touch with us. Any questions you may have for the Millbourne group, you can always get an answer. There's always a tremendous amount of info and high value, like high level information available to you. Like if you're thinking $1,300 a month is crazy price intro, well, it's not because it's going to be $2,000. But if that's puzzling you and you want to talk about it, we can always bring somebody who can answer those questions for you. Last but not least, Mr. Jas Takhar, actually, and Laura, who is an MBA in marketing, have invested a tremendous amount of time putting together season 1 of the REC, the Real Estate Center's audio experience. It's on iTunes. It's on every single social media platform.
Podcast.
It's a podcast. This does not have sales. This does not have anything other than educational value for our entire database. We did it because we can't do enough of these per year. These are big events that take a long time to put together, to get schedules matched up for these high value proposition people that we bring to the table. But on the podcast, you can reach out to it 24/7, 365.
And there's a reason you put me on the podcast because I don't have a face for video.
Like myself.
That's for serious.
So I'm on the YouTube channel.
He's the one in front of the camera.
So why? But really, the YouTube channel is to me a little bit secondary because you have to be in front of a computer. I tried to get us put through into the YouTube channel, so we kind of double up on. We get 2 bangs at the same effort, kind of thing. But the podcast is our main serving. Like the podcast has a lot of value. They're 20 to 45 minutes.
That's a great point because even as we did this today, it's obviously been recorded on video. You'll get the links for the video, but you'll also, hence why we're wearing the mics, because this will just be transmitted into audio and distributed through a podcast.
Yeah.
iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can get there and listen.
Sign up, find it. If you need help, it's the link of the email invitation you had here. Please sign up. We're going to be in touch all the time with great value. We hope this was valuable for you tonight. We thank you again for being here.
Give yourselves a round of applause for us.